Good day, everybody. Good evening to Europe. Good morning to the west coast of North America and Asia. You'll be watching us on the replay here, but I'm really pleased about today's special guest on the Packard Network Live, Mr. Dave Tina. We're going to have a robust conversation about really what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur and a great leader, not only in your community or in your business, but actually in your day-to-day life. And Dave is going to, I'm sure, convince you that he's the right person to talk about this particular subject. But before just a brief introduction that I'll do of Dave, and he can then fill in any points that I miss. But he's the founder and owner of Urban Nest Realty, based in Las Vegas, and this firm has won I don't know how many awards. It's all over the place. It's defined itself in a crowded industry. I own a home there. I bought my home with Dave a decade ago, it's a really crowded market. But Urban Nest has defined a unique, what I think is a unique proposition. And Dave can talk more about that. But and for those of you that are overseas that think that Las Vegas is just the gaming capital of the world, along with Macau, that's not the case. It is and has been for a long time, a very robust, rapidly growing real estate market that has actually reshaped the entire city. And it's now a metropolis, and Dave often refers to it as a metropolis, and because it is. And so it's much more than gaming as well. And we're going to talk a bit about the uniqueness of Urban Nest, but it's built off of long-term relationships and the highest ethical standards. And this is my perception of it. And again, Dave can kind of color it in, but basically, not only does Urban Nest and all of its staff have a good relationship and investment in the community, but they view relationships between a family and their home. They don't view things as a transaction. And when we get into the weeds on this thing, it's not about a transaction. It's about your relationship with your home. It's also about a relationship between a client and an agent with the support of the brokerage. So it's a holistic, actually family-oriented type of proposition. And sometimes I need to be corrected, but without further ado, Dave, maybe you can kind of re-steer the audience on my description of your business. But I'd like to welcome you to the program. Thanks very much for joining.
Well, thank you, Brett. I mean, it's always interesting hearing the perception of other people, right? To see what they're seeing. So we went through the whole EOS. I don't know if you probably have the EOS Gino Wickman operating system. We had to really define what our values are and what our motto is. And from doing speeches for my father over and over and over again, because he has been a leader at every level in the real estate industry. So I'm always introducing him and coming up with new content to introduce him. There was a prevailing theme that I kept saying, and it was, he left people better than he found them. And it has become my motto and the company's motto, and we've tweaked it a little bit to work with real estate, is we leave people in a better place than we found them. And you know, when you being a leader, being an entrepreneur, being in any of these roles, it's so easy to fall into the trap of wanting to do so much and make so much change and move the needle. But when you just focus on that simple thing, it becomes much more attainable and more pure, I think. So that's kind of what we're about.
Mm-hmm. I think that's terrific, and that takes time, right? It takes time to actually achieve and back up what you just said, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, my father's 25 years older than me. He's my mentor. He was the best man in my wedding. And, I'm definitely the more entrepreneurial of the two of us. So I'm more go, 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 go. And he's done a great job of grounding me and really teaching me that the long game always wins.
Mm.
And not necessarily going slow, but really seeing, like, start with the end in mind and see how this is going to play out. And it's tough, and especially in today's society, where everything is yesterday. Like, we want it so
Mhm.
fast, but it has benefited us so much by being steady and doing the right thing over and over again, especially in the beginning of our company when it's much more seductive to cut corners because you want to have a successful company. But we put in that foundation early on, and we never sold our soul or compromised our integrity. We played that long game, and a decade later, it's paying tremendous dividends.
Yeah, I mean, it's in your DNA, right? And I am. What do you look for when you're deciding to bring somebody on board the Urban Nest family? What are some of the characteristics that you look for in the people? Because obviously that's where things happen, right? Where at the client level.
Yeah, I mean, I believe your business is a reflection of who you are, right? And I also believe that you attract who you are. So when we are looking for people, we go on our values, but the number one thing that has to take precedence for us is doing the right thing and choosing, like, putting, and I know it's a cliche, but putting people before profit, putting, what's right. Because you are not gonna get in trouble if you start and lead with that. So do the right thing is number one. A willingness to do the work is definitely number two. Like, I don't care really what your results are right away, as long as you're willing to commit to the work. When people
Mm.
say to me, well, that program didn't work or this thing didn't work, I said, no, 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 no. You didn't work. So that's number two. And
Right.
then the last one is a level up. It's growth mindset. And you hit your goals, then let's raise the standards again, because
Hmm.
um, you know I may only get some of these agents for a year, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, and they're not going to remember the commissions. They're not going to remember the transactions. They remember the experience they had with my father and I, and the environment that we built. And
Mm.
I take that really seriously, because I look back in different places that I worked and companies that we've owned, and I remember the people and the experiences, and I want them to be able to look back on that with us.
Yeah, I think you're right, Dave. And it's funny you mentioned that. On Sunday, I was speaking with some members of my former city Japan team, and one was in Tokyo, one was in Nagoya, and we were having a conversation about this. And I asked them the question, "What do you remember? What the profit was back in the early 2000s?" They had no clue. Everybody forgets the number, right? And I said, "What do you remember about our experience together?" And they talked about similar things you talked about as well. And that's really what makes a difference in getting this Wall Street mentality out of your proposition to do what's right in the long term. It's not easy to do that, right, Dave? I mean, and it really can't be in the real estate industry that's moving so fast and it's so cyclical. Are Do you find, I know you're not, but do you ever find that either part of your team or the competition is tempted by that Wall Street pull when, for example, market's been booming this year? There are a lot of temptations out there.
Yeah, I mean, I had an agent walk in yesterday who is
Mhm.
amazing, and she's as happy as a clam here, and she's debating about going to a company that gives um, stock options, because there may be a payout down the line. And I'm like, talk about not seeing the forest through the trees. And I said, it may be, you may make a ton of money. I mean, I may invest in it. Great. I said, but you don't want to be like the 80% of everybody who's just chasing the dollar, and we had to have a heart to heart. Some of my competitors, I send agents to, agents that are productive, but didn't, adhere to the first rule of doing the right thing. We give them opportunity after opportunity. And even though they're productive, I'll say, all right, call one of my competitors who owns a company. I'm like, sending them your way. I'm giving you the heads up. Now we'll take them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a validation for myself that we walk the walk, because everyone talks about integrity. Everyone talks about doing the right thing. But if you have a value of making money and a value of doing the right thing, when those values collide, which one wins?
Mm-hmm.
And the one that wins with me and my father is doing the right thing. It's not easy to walk away from money. I don't care what anyone says, when $20,000 walks out the door, but long-term, we keep that reputation of Dave and Dave.
Yeah.
And it's worth it.
That's the key, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. When you overlay the time horizon on top of that, let's say push-pull or that potential conflict between profit doing the right thing. But if you overlay the time frame, is there really a conflict? I think your 10 years has proven that there's not. But if you apply a short-term time frame to the transaction today, most people will run for the profit, right?
They do. I think it's human nature. And, it's easy for me to say it now since I'm in a much better spot financially. But, we've done this the entire time. And I believe because we did it from the beginning, it made it easier to stay with that. Whereas if you say to yourself, I'm just going to play this short game for a short period of time, and then I'm going to course correct as I go. And then I'm going to do integrity when I make money. It's like saying I'm only going to be philanthropic when I make money. I'm not going to give it now. That never works. Like if
you're right, you attract what you are, right? You said it a while ago. You said it very well, right? You are, we're all the result of choices that we've made, right? That's who we are. You can't flip it on and off.
Exactly.
How many real estate cycles up and down have you been through the last 10 years since you've had this business? And you already have told us a couple of times, I lost count, that you have not changed your philosophy. But how many business cycles have you been through in the past decade?
I mean, we've owned this company for a decade. We ran someone else's for a decade. We made that a number one company. I was born in 77, but like my father and he raised me. So I understand what went down in the 80s. So I've been through a couple of cycles. 2008 was a tremendous one. It's always in the back of my mind, right? Of what can happen. So I am playing that game of, everyone right now, I think is I know it's a little off topic, but I think it's worth talking about.
Yep.
It's a little bit of a pivot. They're having that FOMO, fear of missing out on the stock market, the Bitcoin and all the homes, like, because things are going up so fast, right? And they don't want to hedge against inflation as well. And I understand that. But the cycles, like you talked about, all that glitters isn't gold. Eventually, it's going to stop. So I think the way I've been playing it is how much it's offense and defense at the same time, right? So how much offense you want, fine. Like it's like a football team, like we talk about. Like some teams are going to be heavily weighted offensively, but they're going to have a decent defense to win a championship. You got to play to those strengths. So owning a company, dealing with the cycles of real estate that we can't control. We could forecast all we want, but you have government agencies and that can manipulate everything. So you got to be willing to be innovative and growth minded, but at the same time have a strong foundation and invest when things are well in your infrastructure. So it's one of those, I think we're built for winter, all seasons. And I tell my agents that all the time, but you got to be able to be like Braveheart, where you're like, hold, right?
Right.
So.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I mean, that's what it takes. You have to have some finesse as well. And that, do you have some principles, Dave, that you look at in balancing these things out? Because here's two people talking right now to a global audience and we're talking a bit about real estate, but this works in any kind of business, right? It really does. But real estate though, Dave, in Las Vegas, it can be really volatile, right? So do you have some guiding principles or something that you've found, you and your father, or you or your father have found that kind of help you weather all storms?
I do. I sit in this office and I ask, myself these questions all the time. We have Zillow, EXP, Redfin, everything that is happening in the nation, in the world, they try in Las Vegas. So like iBuying, you name it all happens here. And I say, how does an independent know for sure that I'm here in 5-10 years when I'm having that big conversation? And I have principles, but I first say that it's gonna, Moore's law. Have you ever heard of Moore's law? How quickly things double? And well, I believe Moore's law is going to disrupt this industry and every industry very quickly, right? So what's going to happen? 80% of realtors are going to be low value facilitators, right? They're going to be Expedia. That's just the way it's going to go. They're going to throw your house on an MLS, open a door for you. There's not going to be customer service, negotiations, marketing, and all the skills that you need to be the other 20%, like the 80-20 rule, which is a high valued, trusted advisor, which I don't even want to be called a realtor anymore. I'm going to be called a consultant of real estate services, because that's what I believe. And in order
big difference.
Huge. Like if we're talking about a deal, Brett, and you're an intelligent man and you understand markets, and why would you want to hire a realtor, right? And I have to give you a value proposition and say, here's the thing, this isn't 2%, 3%. This is a consulting fee, because I understand the market at the highest level, right? I am in the game. I'm plugged in. Here's where I'm going to market your home. Here's how I'm going to negotiate the price. Here's the service you're going to get from me. All of those things that differentiate. So I look at it as a fee, because you're going to go on to Zillow and Google and everything and get a lot of information that is too much, and I'm going to cut through, right?
I'm paralyzed, right, with all this stuff. Yep.
Exactly. Whereas a nuance of one area where you have a house or whatever, I know it inside out, right? So I have these 5 fundamentals that are time tested, but they work now, because I don't believe in not being innovative and, this is the old stodgy way of doing it. It's take these and then put them on steroids. So real quick, number 1 is relationships. There's 100,000 real estate sides a year just in Las Vegas. Wow. Just in Las Vegas. So 45,000 homes sell. There's a buyer and a seller. Then you got 15,000 new homes. So if an agent wants to close 50 transactions, they're going to do really well. You can get 50 transactions out of 100,000 deals. So I believe it's easy to carve out. Just in my company alone, we have paid out $30 million in commission as of October 31st.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
So there's a spot for you to get your little slice. So if you take care of your own people at the highest level, and you're honest to them and you're transparent and you stay in front of them and you genuinely care, you can't get beat. So number 1 is always relationships. Number 2, I believe you have to be a specialist, right? Specialist over generalist. You have to niche down hard. And I have a little joke, niches get riches, right? So don't be everything for everybody. If you want to read about the Sooners, you're not going to go to a college football podcast. You're going to go to an Oklahoma Sooner podcast, right? You want to listen just to that specialized area. So
exactly.
Right. And then number 3 is raise your prices. I got this from a Tim Ferriss book called Tools of Titans. And he interviews a bunch of different people and he asks them, what's your one billboard quote? And Mark Andreessen said, raise your prices. And because most people undervalue what they're worth. And it's kind of evolved into raise your standards, because when you raise your prices, you're having a conversation with yourself about what your worth is. So when you raise your standards, you will attract a different clientele and you get what you're worth. The 4th one is, again, another simple one. Add massive value, concierge service. I mean, everyone remembers the first time they go to the Montage or they're in Disney. And I believe in today's world, it's easy to differentiate yourself by doing that one extra thing. So again, it's super easy fundamental. And then the last one, it's just differentiation. And what are you? And I don't think you could just be a realtor today. There's 2 million realtors in this nation. You got to be a realtor, and what else are you? Right. And that's where you connect. I'm a realtor and a coach, a realtor and a father, a realtor and a husband, a foodie, a sports fan. There's more layers to me. And I think if you share that, especially on social media, people connect. So
yeah, I think you're right. And, Dave, I mean, I think people in the community look up to you also in a way that we haven't talked about, which is just your leadership philosophy as a person, right? And a family man, right? And, we haven't really dived into a lot of that, but that's one of the outcomes of this business. We're talking about business philosophy today, but it's there's a whole other side that you and I could talk for hours on this, but you're spot on. I mean, I think it's becoming apparent so far in our conversation why Urban Nest has received so many awards. I mean, I think you somewhere in your feed is, I don't know, a couple months ago, some big award ceremony that you all went there and cleaned house, I think, at these industry awards, right? So I mean, this stuff also pays off, and 30 million in commissions just paid by your firm this year, but also another big payoff for these industry awards, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's always nice to be recognized. This one was a little different because most of the awards given out that night were to big franchises, and people have been around forever. I don't want to say good old boy, but my father and I have been here about 25 years, but I'm talking like industry icons have been here for almost centuries, right? Even though we have 500 agents, I consider us an independent and a little guy. So to be recognized as the one, this isn't like they recognize multiple, one agency of the year for residential, it felt nice. I mean, these awards, it's subjective and whatnot, but to pick that up, I was driving down to the award ceremony with my wife, Angie, and I was like, I know it doesn't mean anything, but it feels good. Like you shouldn't have to need the validation from other people. But every once in a while, I think you have to stop and look back and go, all right.
You're right. It's compensation, right, Dave? I mean, it's the same in any sales business, right? And a lot of big businesses that I've run, the people value, actually, in most cases, the recognition, especially in industry recognition, above and beyond their compensation, because the compensation will follow that, right? So
that's true.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely wonderful. Dave, how do you, getting a little bit more on the personal side, your leadership philosophy, and you've touched on that in a lot of this, and it's clear that you've brought that. It all starts at the top in any business, and that's been crystal clear here. How do you have faith and confidence that your philosophy is going to work and it's a broad question. It's not just your business, but in your life and taking care of your family?
It's a great question. I believe whether it's your soul, whether it's the voice, whether it's God, regardless of what is talking to you, you need to listen to it. And it took me a while to give myself full agency and permission to have no apologies and just go with it. And once I accessed that completely, everything opened up. And it's just this level of vulnerability that I used to think was a weakness is such a strength. And I pride myself of being the realest person in the room and willing to throw myself under the bus first and invite people to join me. Because if we can cut through that, then we can have some real impactful conversation. We can get through all the nonsense quickly and get to where we want to go. We can address things.
That's right. You can. So, yeah. What got you over? I mean, that's fascinating to me, what you just said, right? But what got you over that? Was there an event, or did a lot of time go by? How did you make that switch from being vulnerable into what you just talked about?
Well, I've always been overly real, and I've been punished a lot from it. Like, Dave, you can't say that. Dave, you can't be that honest in negotiations, Dave. And what I've always been on this search, Brett, where like I just try everything. I try every religion. I tried Tony Robbins. I went to a warrior event, which was like Navy SEAL training, and I got my butt kicked, and I paid $10,000 to be waterboarded. I mean, insane stuff, right? Therapy. I'm a seeker of finding and accessing everything. And what I learned across the board is that it was always in me. I just didn't give myself that access to it. And like I said, it was like I would be listening to someone going, yes, that's what I've always been feeling. That's what I feel. And I would do it. I wasn't even stopping myself from doing it, but I would punish myself after it and be like, why'd you do that? Or apologize for it, where I didn't realize it was my greatest strength. And it's the most freeing thing in the world to bring who you are to every situation you're in, and then also be commended for it, or not even commended, but people connecting to it, because then it just compounds and you want to do it more and more and more.
Yeah, I mean, it's very noticeable, right? We're talking about you today, right? It's very noticeable, these things. But I didn't realize the journey that you'd been through on some of this stuff. I think that's fascinating, and no regrets, I'm sure, right?
No.
Having gone through all that, because that has helped build you into what you are today, which is a great leader in the community. That's really my perception. If I'm going to summarize it of you, that's what you are, right? Great person and leader in the community. It's great. And sometimes you have to get some scars to do that, but it's part of learning.
I don't believe you can grow without pain. There has to be some kind of pain, but if you could turn what do they say? One of my mentors says, turn the mess into a message, right? And, to be able to reframe all of these things while they're happening to you, and say, this is happening for a reason. It sucks. I don't like it, but it is going to be the thing that defines me moving forward. And I'm going to be stronger and more intentional because of it. I mean, I don't always win that battle, Brett, but I have the frame that I'm looking for the lesson. So,
but you win the war. So, that's what's important at the end of the day, right? And we all have our own, and we all define wars differently. And I'm always I get a lot of questions from viewers on this program about battle and wars and, the whole thing that way. And, and they say, but I don't have a war. But we all have a different, whether you call it a war or let's call it success, right? So success, we all know, isn't about money, doesn't buy happiness, but it sure makes it a lot easier to be happy when you don't have to worry about that. But you do things like you've done at Urban Nest and your father have done to attract success, and then the money follows it instead of just chasing the money on a transaction by transaction basis. And I think that is just great, because it builds the character of an individual. Some of the best people that I've worked with and hired and around the world are those kinds of people that they don't worry about the money, right? But you know what? The money always finds them. It's always there, right?
I always say, I've been in a lot of leadership positions, and people are so just focused on the power and the significance. And I always say, a great leader, the byproduct of great leadership is all the things I just said. So the byproduct of doing the right thing is the money. But you're right. I mean, it just depends what order you put it in. When you focus on the wrong thing, then you lose out on all that opportunity. It's just one of those little distinctions that you sometimes find out later than you should, right?
I think you're right. And, this stuff that we're talking about here, I don't know the name of the textbook that it's it's documented in, but it's learn by doing, and that's one of the things there. Dave, any final pieces of advice before we sign off on any messages to the viewers to recap what you've learned throughout your life?
Yeah, I actually have something. I was
Sure.
connecting with one of my, I was in a Vistage group, which is like a CEO group. And I was
Mm.
connecting with one of my old Vistage members, and we were kind of doing a check-in. And it's been a year since we've connected. And I was like, oh, I did this and this and this and that. And I was like, oh my God, I did this all in a year. I didn't even realize it. And he's like, man, you're crushing it. You're like, you're really doing well. And I said, no. I said, no, I appreciate it. I said, but I'm just really a train wreck that is committed to growing and going. And I somehow get there. And I think people think that when they see success in other people, they think they got it all together. They don't. It's a lot of stops and starts and a lot of
It
pain,
is. It can be
difficulty.
messy, right?
It is. But as long as you commit
Mm.
to going and then having faith in the results, like submit to the results, I think that's the best thing you can do.
You're right. Don't sit on the sidelines, right?
Yep.
When you have access to the field, and we all have that access, right? So get in the game, right? And you can define whatever game you want to play in, but get in it, right?
Yep.
That's
Couldn't
I
agree
run
more with
across
that.
that so often. I think that's great. Dave, thank you for taking the time to share your wisdom with us today, and all the best of continued success to you, your father, the entire Urban Nest team. As a long-term client, I can tell you that I'm pulling for you and only you and your business's philosophy, and may the recognition and rewards and the best people in the market keep coming your way. I think it's great. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you for having me, and give Lori my love. And
I will do that. Thank you. And
say no to any of those
everybody,
either.
and everybody, next week, the cameras will be moving to Manila in the Philippines, where I will have a very special guest that is well known throughout the country, and more details will be released on that next Tuesday. So until then, have a terrific day, and thanks very